This is the Out of Time Film Podcast, where your hosts Tom and John discuss everything from blockbuster films to TV and games like there's no tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to the Out of Time Film Podcast. I'm Tom.
I'm John.
And this week we are talking about Captain America: Civil War.
Do you remember a long time ago, we had a massive love for Civil War, you know, like all the trailers for it, we loved the promotion for it, we were just so excited for it, especially for Spider-Man, because we were over the moon about Spider-Man when he was announced for this film, and this was deeply inspired from the Civil War graphic novel, which I do love. You were the first person to talk about Civil War to me. You're like, hey John, you need to read this is pretty good. So I read it.
It's the first comic that I ever read, and it's the first time that I've ever seen a film directly inspired by a comic that I'd read before, and I was like, what is going on? This is awesome.
Well, in the past, I used to love this film. This was one of those films that I was just so excited about in terms of like, this is a huge event, but now it feels completely different, recontextualizing everything that we've seen in Captain America, because this is also focused on Captain America in terms of where he stands in this world where superheroes have a massive effect on the public and how much lives have been teared apart. There's this whole causality that's been happening in this. So that was really interesting. I think this was a very self-aware Marvel film. Batman v Superman also came out this year. So it's like a lot of things to think about with superheroes.
Yeah, I feel like if you watch the MCU and a lot of superhero films of the 2010s, you can feel that they're reactionary to what people say. And a big thing is superheroes always cause so much damage, and this idea of the consequences. A lot of fans were talking about that. And this is a direct response to that. The film, quite plain and simply, is the Avengers are presented with this Sokovia Accord, which says you need to be put in check by the government, who will control where you go, what you do, and the consequences and the blame will be shared rather than be on you specifically. And half of them agree and half of them don't. And there you get your split, your Team Cap, your Team Iron Man. And that's where I want to start, because, John, I have to add, this might change the entire podcast. Your answer to this question may determine whether we continue at all. This might be the end. We're watching history happen right now.
Oh no, okay.
Are you Team Cap or Team Iron Man?
I think I'm Team Cap.
Hell yeah, okay. We're okay, guys. We're okay. We're good.
I'm Team Cap, because Tony Stark's argument about the whole Sokovia Accords, I do understand. Why am I taking this as serious? It's like a serious debate that we're doing right here. It's not real, but it does feel grounded. So I do understand his stance in it and make the world a better place, because the whole thing that happened in Iron Man had a massive effect on him about his weapons being turned on him. But then Captain America, he is right. He is right about how we need to save lives and we got to take responsibility in that. He even takes responsibility when he talks to Wanda, how he could have just stopped Crossbones. He takes responsibility, he takes accountability in that. That's the whole idea of that, how our actions have consequences, and those who agree with Sokovia Accords don't really take accountability, like they just want to have some safety net. But then there's people to be saved. There's a whole plethora of ideas. And also there was a whole debate for this back in 2016.
It was a massive part of the marketing. It still gets fans a little bit riled up these days. And for me, there's just no argument. To be a superhero, you need to save everyone, irrespective of politics and of government and of a country. Recently, Anthony Mackie has come under a little bit of fire for saying that Captain America, it's not about America, it's about the idea of what America could and should be, and this notion of saving everyone and treating everybody like they deserve, saying some people are like, whoa, hold on, Captain America's supposed to be all about America. But I think Anthony Mackie is completely right. A superhero should first and foremost protect the innocent. And the idea that Tony Stark comes to it with, we shouldn't be allowed to just go off on our own, you know, whenever we want and cause such destruction. He's not wrong from that perspective, but from the perspective of we'll only do what the government wants us to do. I don't know, man. I don't know. But I have to say, in this film, the idea of the Avengers facing real consequences of their actions, the idea of unchecked power, of vengeance, of justice for the dead, and whether that is even possible, I mean, that's some brilliant stuff. And when the film is about that and just that, it's so bloody good.
It is very good in terms of how it explores Tony's inner conflict about how he wants to truly save the world. A different side to Tony in a way. He's anxiety driven. He doesn't really know what to do. But this is Captain America. There's great scenes to like have this debate. And also this is a great introduction to Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther, which I just absolutely love.
Yeah, this film is quite clearly the longest Captain America film. I think it might also be the longest MCU film at this point.
Yeah.
And somehow it doesn't buckle under the weight of all the characters. And revisiting it, obviously, it's not as expansive as the comic. And the MCU at this point wasn't that expansive. I mean, if you did Civil War now, it would be much more expansive. And you would need to do at least maybe 2 movies, if not like a 4-hour long picture to make it all work. But they do manage to get it. And I'm so happy you brought it up because Chadwick Boseman is perfect as Black Panther. That should go without saying, of course, but seeing him here in his first appearance, looking back, is so amazing. I mean, T'Challa is full of anger and driven by revenge, but his arc to balance himself and let go of his pain, it's amazing, and it's done with so much nuance. He always has his feelings that you can kind of feel bubbling beneath the surface but are hidden after the kind and happy man that we were introduced to before he's broken by the death of his father. Obviously, Chadwick Boseman was such perfect casting and had such powerful gravitas, and every time I see him, I can't help but still be so saddened by his loss. But the fact that the film manages to introduce him and Spider-Man and loop in so many characters, it's really, really well done.
I agree, because there was some bits of the film that kind of just drew me off. Like, we do talk about the tones throughout the 3 films so far. Like, Captain America, the Winter Soldier does have a great tone to it. It's its own tone. It's its own thing that it's trying to work on. In this one, I have to say it's weirdly consistent. I truly love when it feels grounded. There's some great scenes, especially with T'Challa at the end when he talks to Zemo.
Oh my God.
Brilliant.
Could that
Cinema.
be one of the greatest scenes in the MCU of all time? We're not in spoilers yet, but just, you know what? We're in spoilers. Let's just go straight into it.
Yeah.
What a scene. What a moment.
What a scene. The way he talks about vengeance and also Zemo's plan as well to take down the Avengers. What if you tear the Avengers apart within inside? Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And you try to work out what Zemo's trying to do all the way through. Is he a villain or is he not? You do get to see him in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, again, dancing. He's a great character to explore. He's a very flawed character, but you do understand where he's coming from in terms of how much he wants to save his family. There's a lot of emotions to go through in this one. However, when the movies do go like this amazing scenes to explore characters and what they truly want to do in this world, there's amazing scenes, fight sequences, amazing, and then you got the airport sequence, which completely, I'm very flawed about that because it's a great scene to watch in the cinema back in the day. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. But now when you watch the film and thinking about the amazing fight sequences, how grounded it is, and then you see the entire airport sequence and it's full of CGI. It's not a soundstage, but it's just not really immersive. And it just, am I even watching the same film?
I'm so glad that you've brought this up because I've made notes throughout and I've just written airport battle is kind of mid. And I'm so sad. Like, I used to love that scene and now I'm just kind of like, throughout the dialogue is so stunted and awkward. It feels like it's just forcing this comedy that clashes with the rest of the film.
CGI is so awkward as well.
Right, yeah, everyone feels like they're shot on green screen in different locations or both. It's got some really bad CGI. There's so much ADR and the music isn't doing anything. The airport is such a boring location. I was so disappointed with it. I mean, there are some good moments. The Ant-Man, Giant Man stuff, that is undeniably really great.
That is pretty cool.
There
There
are various little moments of Spider-Man and Black Panther that are really good. The ending is really solid with Rhodey, but the Russos never really direct it in any interesting ways. It almost feels completely tensionless the whole time. And throughout the film, some of the CGI is really bad. Like the floating Tony Stark head, embarrassing.
That is so embarrassing.
The biggest movies in the world, and it looks like this? No, I'm sorry.
Still, like 2016, if you look back all the movies before 2016, there are some amazing special effects. But I wonder how much time they worked on the CGI for this film, because the Spidey suit as well, which was so CGI, that confused me because I'm like, you just could have done an actual suit.
Can I go on record here?
Yes, go off, King.
The Spider-Man suit sucks in this film. It doesn't feel real. It feels just painted. If you look at what he wore on set, it's so much better. Yeah, it's funny. You get like these shots of Team Cap and Team Iron Man facing off, and Team Cap, you have these beautiful suits. Like Captain America has never looked better. The Falcon looks amazing. Ant-Man's got a little upgrade from his suit. Hawkeye's got a new suit. Scarlet Witch has got a new suit. Bucky's arm looks amazing. And you cut to Team Iron Man, and it's like 3 fully CGI characters who look like absolute arse. You got Vision, who looks good, but the color grading is dreadful. You got Black Widow, who just looks like Scarlett Johansson standing next to a bunch of animated characters. And then Black Panther wearing a really cool suit. It's night and day between those two teams and how they actually look. And it's so bloody disappointing. The CGI is really, really wonky. We all know about Marvel crunch time. We all know that it's bad, but
They love their crunch time. Yeah.
They do.
They could have just
I
extended it somewhere. Maybe took a different approach. But again, it's weird because we've talked about this, about how there's been a lot of Marvel movies. And it's like, why are they pushing out so much? This is so weird. But then they just wanted to have something to keep engaging the audience all the way through. There's the downfall of that with the crunch time. And Civil War really shows that. What happened with that? Did something fall through with this? It just looks ugly.
Yeah, last week we spoke about the Russo brothers as directors, and I said I wasn't really a fan of their direction. That doesn't change with this film, but I think I understand now why I feel like that, because they're really good at telling the story. They put the camera in place, and when they have a good script and good actors, you get some incredible stuff. This film, I would say, has some of the best dialogue in the MCU. Like we were saying, that scene with Zemo and T'Challa is really, really good. But never, as directors, do they do anything that makes any of the action, any of the images stand out. You know, the most iconic images of this movie are the ones that recreate a comic book panel or a classic superhero pose or heroes facing off against each other. But it's not done in any interesting way. Not really. Like the Russos, there's never a time when they move the camera in an interesting or surprising way. And I understand that that's not going to bother most people, but I want more. And it just kind of bores me. It's a real disappointment. And it's a real disappointment that they're the ones directing the next 2 Avengers movies, because it's such a dull choice. And that doesn't mean this film is bad. It doesn't mean that any of their films that they've made in the MCU are bad. They're just not great directors. And here they made a good movie. And in Winter Soldier, they made a good movie. And I'm sure Infinity War and Endgame, when I rewatch them, they will be good movies. But Jesus Christ, they are so upsettingly boring. Remember when we rewatched the first Avengers?
Yes.
Like, a lot of people say that film looks like a TV show, but that film has shots that have loads more to communicate, and there's so much more color, and the way that the action is shot and the way that the conversational scenes are shot, it's so much more interesting than what the Russos do.
Yeah, there was a flow within that. Whereas these films directed by the Russos, it just feels very stagnant. They'll just put a camera there and then just don't do anything new with it. They're just going along with the script, which is great, but what flair do they have? What do they bring to the table? I just feel like they just have nothing to really explore, because you do get to see different styles throughout the MCU, which is so interesting. And you also get to see that in comics. Different art styles, different structures that they have. So there's the argument of, could they do something different, or was it Marvel?
A lot of critics of this film want it to be more like the comic, and I absolutely understand that. I adore the comic with all my heart, but honestly, it doesn't bother me, because the MCU has never been one to directly adapt comics. And I think that's a good thing, because they would be shit at it. I mean, like, let's be honest, they wouldn't do a good job. Every time that they try to adapt something from the comics, you know, directly, I'm like, you fucked it up. So I don't know why it's such a big deal. If you want Civil War the comic, read the comic. It's fantastic. Yeah. And this is great too, but in its own way. And I feel like it's a bit of a pointless criticism, really. I prefer to take this on its own merit. Civil War the comic doesn't really have the classic sense of a villain, but this film, it's got Zemo, and I think that Zemo, he could be the best villain in the Cap trilogy, easily. He has the most menace, he's the most layered. Daniel Brühl plays him so well, and his impact is really felt, especially with the wider Avengers story. I just think that if you went with it exactly like what the comic is, it wouldn't work, especially for the story that they want to then go to tell in Infinity War. This idea of the public hating Captain America by the end and loving Iron Man. That's not what they want to tell. By the end, it becomes something just between Cap and Iron Man rather than between the entirety of the Avengers. And that's the story they want to tell. Fine. I'm not saying it works completely, but like, that's what they're going for.
Yeah, that's a brilliant way to put it down when it comes to films trying to replicate comics. But then again, you have to consider about what Marvel was trying to do at the time, trying to build up within the saga a lot of things with different story branches, a lot of characters, trying to introduce a lot of things in Infinity Saga. So like Civil War was in the midst of everything that was going on, and it did its best to bring out some of the stuff in the comics, which it did with the Sokovia Accords, like united we stand, divided we fall. That's the whole thing it takes from, and we do take a lot from this. It's done its own thing. I did quote that from the TV spot that we used to love
Oh
as
my
well.
God, the Super
United we
Bowl.
stand, divided we
Yeah.
fall. Absolutely
Mm.
brilliant. The promotion for this.
Yeah, I mean, you do kind of lose the initial argument of the Accords as the film goes on, which is a shame because those scenes where the characters just sit there and debate their ideologies are my favorite of the film. Like the first act,
I agree.
I was just like, oh my God, this is going to be an all-timer. And then as we go on, it gets less good. But I can't deny that the end coming down to a fight between friends and a struggle between the love that Steve has for Bucky and that Tony has for his mother, it's really good. And even if I feel it would have been better if they had ended up fighting because of their differences in character and ideology, that is a good ending. It's a pretty cool fight as well. It's what you want. You come to a film for Civil War, you want to watch them fight, there it is. You know, a lot of people were frustrated with Batman v Superman because the actual fight between those two is fairly short. The MCU is a crowd-pleasing franchise. You want the battle, here's the battle. As you said earlier, they do tone the comedy down a little bit. There are still those moments of comedy that I do hate, but especially at the end, they let that dialogue just sit, and it is really good. You get the callback of I can do this all day, and the idea of he's my friend, so was I, and the you don't deserve that shield, and obviously the whole conversation between T'Challa and Zemo at the same time. I think that's all really great. But okay, speaking of comedy, how are we feeling about Spider-Man in this film? First introduction to MC Spider-Man, what do you think?
I say it's strong. There is a lot of flair from Tom Holland. Again, I think it's the writing that does it. It's not too much. I mean, it's the first introduction that I really liked. The battle, it's good in terms of like the quippy, witty lines that he has, which I do like. But it's kind of jarring when you look back to the other films with Spider-Man. It's so vastly different to here because Peter knows a lot of things, but also it's like newly experienced Spider-Man as well. So it is interesting for me to look back and like, okay, this is a great part of the film, but then it changes down the line. So yeah. I don't know. It's cool. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think that the introduction scene's really great. He's got some cool moments in the action. The writing, for the most part, really understands Peter Parker, understands
Yeah.
Spider-Man. I have to say, Peter Parker being on Team Iron Man is crazy.
It is crazy.
That makes no sense.
Yeah, to also reconsider, it's like, I wouldn't say he knows what's going on because he knows about Tony. Because it's a weird introduction, like you bring Tony Stark, but Spider-Man is a vastly different character. Like he does his own thing, in New York, saving people, but then gets recruited by Iron Man. It's kind of weird because this is a billionaire tech guy and brings in the suit and it ruins everything for the character build up. Like, is he Spider-Man still? Does it go into that? So it's like, does he earn the suit? Does he earn anything?
And that kind of is what Homecoming then becomes about. But I wish Homecoming was also a film where Spider-Man realizes, oh my God, I supported the government, the institutions that I don't actually. But Spider-Man is friendly neighborhood. He is the working class hero. I would have really liked it if MC Spider-Man had actually explored the fact that he sided with Iron Man, and that was the wrong decision. It's a massive shame because the Sokovia Accords and this whole thing rarely come up anymore. There's a little bit of them in some of the Netflix shows.
Across the films, it's a very interesting point in time to show, but never comes up.
Which I won't... That's not a criticism with this film, though. That's the other film's fault, to be clear. And this film manages to keep the Captain America story in the center still. And, the stuff with Steve and Bucky. I mean, the more I think about it, I think Bucky might be my favorite MCU character. Sebastian Stan owns every scene he's in this movie. At the start, he carries this quiet regret and hidden pain, and you immediately understand how conflicted he is and how tired he is of decades of violence. And there's a bit where he just whispers, it always ends in a fight, and you can feel his age. It's a stark contrast to Steve, and I love it. And unlike Steve, he almost believes he should die. He believes he deserves death or a fate worse than it. Steve says, it wasn't you, Bucky, that you were being mind controlled. And Bucky says, yeah, but I still did it. And I love that conflict. And when he goes full Winter Soldier mode, he's terrifying and he feels nothing but this anger and evil drive. And it's almost like two different people, as it should. I mean, what a performer. We talked about it with Winter Soldier, but he is amazing. And
he is amazing.
I don't know about you, but I'm definitely going to be rewatching Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We're not doing it on the pod, but I'm definitely going to be giving that show a rewatch before Brave New World and Thunderbolts.
I'd say that's a brilliant way to kind of reintroduce yourself into Sam being Captain America, which is so cool.
Yeah, man.
It's funny because you say Bucky is your favorite character in the MCU.
Yeah, maybe one of them.
One of them. Because my favorite character is Rocket. And it kind of works
Yeah.
together because
Yeah.
Rocket does one Bucky's arm, the whole joke with that.
Rocket also has this self-loathing and believes himself that he
Yeah.
deserves
They could be
pain.
the best of buddies.
They could, they could. Well,
Oh,
they're still around. Who knows what could happen?
that would be nice.
Oh, that's an MCU special presentation waiting to
That
happen.
should be a special presentation. Like, that would be a funny, but also heartwarming thing, maybe exploring life. That would be wholesome.
I would love that. The final note that I have as well about this movie, I just wrote Sharon Carter kiss. Ew.
It is very weird.
Ugh. Like, yeah,
'Cause,
especially with what then happens in Endgame. It never felt right.
Did everyone forget that Sharon Carter is a niece?
And also, like, their relationship feels so forced. Like, she has
so
actual
forced.
things to do in the narrative.
She has to be the power broker, I guess. She has to go somewhere,
Yes.
which is such a weird arc to go through.
Yeah, the MCU used to be like my favorite thing, man. Like, part of me wishes that I never rewatched any of them as an adult. I wish they could all be like Guardians or the first Avengers movie where I rewatch them and I fall in love with them again. And it's not going to be like that. It does make me sad, but it's worth it for the memories. I remember watching that second Civil War trailer with you, John, and both of us going absolutely mental at seeing Spider-Man
We were
reveal the
screaming.
end of it.
We were screaming,
We
like
really
running
were.
down the road, and it was just absolutely magical. It was absolutely magical.
It was. And then,
Ah.
like, I remember seeing it at the cinema and ascending during the Giant Man reveal. I remember rewatching this film so many goddamn times, and I will
Damn.
cherish those days. And I just hope to feel the same about newer comic book movies in the future.
Yeah.
So, how have you felt having now completely rewatched the entire original Captain America Steve Rogers trilogy all these years later? Which has been your favorite? How have they fared for you?
This has been really interesting because I think from the first Avenger to the Winter Soldier to Civil War, it's a very interesting but kind of weird place to be because we had some really nice moments in the trilogy. I'd say it's Winter Soldier that's best for me out of the trilogy. That to me felt like it was totally consistent and it felt different to the rest of the story, like in terms of like there was the conflict but also the horrifying nature of like Shield and Hydra, and there was a whole heartbreaking story with Bucky as well. That one to me that was the most grounded and the most we get to see out of Steve in terms of like where he stands in the world, and he's tired of fighting but always he wants to save lives as well. Yeah, what about you?
Well, I mean, it used to be very simply my favorite was Civil War, then Winter Soldier, and then First Avenger, and this time around I gave First Avenger a 7 out of 10 and Winter Soldier an 8 out of 10. I want to rectify that a little bit. I think Winter Soldier for me is also a 7 out of 10. I think all three of them for me are 7 out of 10 movies. It's a fairly consistent trilogy. It's not my favorite trilogy anymore, which is a real shame in terms of the MCU trilogies. But I think actually my favorite these days is First Avenger, followed by Civil War, followed by Winter Soldier. So kind of weird. I think probably I'm the only person ever to have Winter Soldier at my bottom of my Captain America film ranking. But I guess that's
okay.
that. And yes, I'm giving Civil War a 7 out of 10. What are you going to give it out of 10?
7 out of 10.
Brilliant. So concludes the Captain America trilogy.
Wow, what a journey. I feel like we missed out a bunch of films within this trilogy. We're fine. We don't need context.
Yeah,
We don't
by
need-
the end, it's barely a trilogy. You need the Avengers movies, and if you want to watch the Avengers movies, you need the Iron Man. Actually, just watch all the MCU movies. Like,
because
you
there's
can't get
a
around
lot
it.
of context. Like when you get to
Yeah.
Civil War, you're gonna be like at the beginning, who are these characters?
Yeah.
What just happened? What is going on?
Thank you everybody for listening. If you're listening on YouTube and you liked it, you can like and subscribe if you want to see more. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, you can follow and give us a 5-star review if you think we're worthy. And next week we're going to be doing Companion, a kind of romantic thriller-esque. There's one thing I know about the film that I will not say because it feels like a spoiler already.
Oh, okay. I've seen the trailers, so I kind of know some things, but I'm excited to see what the movie has in store for the both of us.
Yes, and you can send us an email at outoftimefilmpod@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on Companion, and we'll answer it right here in the podcast next week.
Yes, and you can follow us on Instagram at Out of Time Film Pod to see our incredible thumbnails from Zain Afzal. We're going to change a bit with Twitter because we want to move away from that. So we're thinking of just moving to Blue Sky.
Check the links in the description and you will know whether
Yes.
it's Twitter or Blue Sky.
Yeah, so Blue Sky, that's going to be still us. And TikTok to see edited clips, which are also on Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. And you can find links to that all in the description below. Thanks to Jones-Meyer for the excellent theme and Ronan Phillips for vocals as always. And I think that's everything. Take away good.
Give nothing back.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.